Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining the EDC Coffee Chat. We are very grateful to have Paul Jarkiewicz join us today. He's the Executive Director of the Port of Port Angeles and has been for the last few months. He was formerly our Director of Operations and was doing a fabulous job. So upon Jeff James's departure, we tapped him and as our interim and then made him the permanent. He just does a terrific job, and I've heard so many good things from people inside the port and throughout the community, and just really appreciate his methodologies, his approach, his style, and he's really helping us usher in a new era of the port to be able to hit the commission's strategic goals. So with that, just a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions for Paul, please don't hesitate to ask. We like to keep this interactive, so either raise your hand or put your question in the chat and I'll call on you. And if you'll put your speaker on, or rather your microphone on mute so we don't inadvertently pick up any background noise, that would be very appreciated. So with that, Paul, I'm going to ask you to take it away. And again, thank you so much for joining us and being willing to share what the port's doing and what the priorities are.
I really appreciate that introduction. I almost had to turn the camera off so I could stop blushing. And I appreciate all those sentiments that you just passed along. And I'm looking at the participant list this morning. I see so many familiar names and faces. So I just wanted to, without individually saying good morning to all of you, just wanted to wish all of you a good morning. It's glad you could join us this morning. I would like to give you an idea of what we're doing at the port today. But to begin with that means we have to go ahead and take a look at a little bit of history. So we'll do that. We'll see what we're doing today, and then we're going to take a look and see what we're doing with some of the projects going forward in the future. If you see something that you have a question about as we go along, feel free to go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll try to go ahead and address the question as we go forward. Or we can do a round robin at the end as well. So I'll try to make sure that we leave enough time for questions. Go ahead and put this up on the screen.
Can everyone hear Paul okay? I can on my end, but I see a chat. I have a chat that they're having a tough time hearing you.
Okay. Let's see if we can improve that. Maybe I need to speak up.
Yeah, that's better if you speak a little bit more loudly.
Okay. So 2023, we celebrated our 100th anniversary, the beginning of the year. And we've been celebrating that as we go through the course of the year. So over 100 years of service to Clallam County. There's a lot of questions as to how the port actually came to exist, what was the purpose of it. I think there's a number of different stories, but the one thing that I actually came across was it was an industrious group of people that decided in 1923 that the city needed a port. So how did that come to be? Well, it seems I'm missing a slide, but basically what ended up happening in 1923 was that looking at the industry that was here, the timber industry, the advent of all of the industries that we see today, the port needed to go ahead and come up with a strategy as to how to go ahead and export a lot of the product that was coming off the peninsula. So the port was established actually at a town meeting in November of 22. And then in January of 1923, it was formally established and the port came to existence. So since then, it's become a vital part of the county's economy. The port actually takes money and drives it into the community through economic development. And that's the number one job that we have at the port, is to go ahead and establish economic development, make sure that we're there to support economy, and make sure that we're there to support business. If we take a look, one of the biggest things that we do, forest products, maritime, and property lease and rents. If we take a look at all of those, forest products are at a tipping point right at this moment. We have to take a look at various other opportunities for us to go ahead and operate the economy. So we've delved into other things like aviation, CRTC, Composite Recycling Technology Center, and other industries such as Stabicraft, which is now building vessels here, along with others that are in our marine trade center. Sorry?
9.
Sorry,
She
hold
won't.
on. I will get
9.
Nope.
9.
him on mute. There we
So-
go. Muted.
And in the Marine Trade Center, we have Westport, still building quite a lot of yachts and furniture in the community, and then also Platypus that has now expanded their business dramatically as far as servicing vessels and for the commercial sector and also for the pleasure sector and yacht refitting. We see a lot of this going on. Still, some of this traditional industries that we've dealt with, logging, servicing the sawmills, making sure that we're supporting the transportation of product out of the port. We still do that on a regular basis. We have had 5 log ships so far this year. We're expecting 7. We're sitting probably 10 days away from another log ship being here. And we also have biomass that we're exporting near foreign, going to Canada. And then we also have a healthy trade going across the Salish. So we're going to the east side right now with quite a bit of timber coming back and forth. We're exporting domestically to the east side, and we're also importing domestically from the east side back to Port Angeles to support one of our clients, which is PA Hardwoods. So forest products traditionally provides a huge economic impact to Clallam County and also the Pacific Northwest. If we take a look at what that brings to Clallam County, direct jobs, 878, indirect 659, and another induced 367. So a total impact of about 1,904 jobs. Out of that grouping, we consider well over 1,000 jobs to be above Prosperous wage, which is $76,000 a year. And then the balance is above living wage jobs. So there's a huge impact and ripple effect across the economy as to what we do with forest products. So that's why the port works so diligently to go ahead and make sure that we're supporting that industry. If we take a look back, we know what's been here, how it's some of the sites that we've had along the waterfront. Fiberboard company at Crescent Boxboard in the harbor back in 1919, which is part of the reason why the export requirements came up. So we can historically see where these mills have been, how that business has evolved, how it's diminished. And now we're also in the phase that we have to transition away from those mills being shut down and taken down. But we also have to, as a responsibility that the port has, is to create opportunity out of brownfields. We also do quite a bit of reclamation and remediation within the harbor to make sure that that happens. You take a look back, this is a familiar site. Everybody knows at the intersection of First and Front Street. In the background, you see what used to be the old K-ply site, Penply. It's been a terminal. It's been a huge operation there in the past where we did quite a bit of inventorying of timber that was going for export. We're in the process right now of taking this site and having done mediation there, now transitioning it into a marine trade center. As I mentioned earlier, we spoke about Westport, we spoke about Platypus and how their businesses have expanded. So we've now decided to take this site, transition it into an area where we can actually expand that business line and allow not only our current clients, but future clients to come in and take advantage of the waterfront and the capability of pulling the vessels out of the water and putting them up on the hard to go ahead and work on. We've now come up with this preliminary design for a marine trade center. We'll provide the infrastructure to the sites, and the idea is that each client's going to come in and go ahead and develop their site plan, their building design, and establish their or expand their business into this site. So Chris Hartman and the team in engineering are working very diligently with our various supporting contractors and vendors to go ahead and make this a reality. And we're now anticipating that we will go shovel the dirt in 2024 to go ahead and start the preliminary phase of this. The majority of the infrastructure build out is being done with an EDA grant for $8.6 million. And we anticipate that we will probably be at a point where we can start operating on this area in 2025. Currently at the airport, we just finished a big runway construction resurfacing phase up at Fairchild. This is a view from the approach end east to west of now renamed runway 27. So there's a realignment due to magnetic variance over the last 100 years. Used to be runway 08 and 26, now it's runway 09 and 27. But as you can look off to the west, beautiful looking runway, and we'll take a look and see what that looks like. I'll share this video with you.
If anyone's a pilot, you know, this is something to appreciate rather than having a chopped up runway that's bouncy and you worry about FOD or foreign, what is FOD? Foreign object damage. It's been a while since I was flying regularly.
So I have to give credit to Jesse Walknitz, our environmental manager, who's also an expert drone pilot, for giving us the aerial view that we have there. And he's also put the composition together of that video. So well done to Jesse. And
Lakeside's done a great job on this.
I was going to say,
yeah.
All reports that I've gotten so far is that the surface on the new runway is absolutely superb. There's brand new lighting that's been installed, and it's a good opportunity for us now with a brand new runway that we can appreciate that it's going to be in place for us for the next foreseeable future. It also adds opportunity for us from a resilience standpoint, but also to go ahead and make sure that we can expand our aviation business at Fairchild. The other components of the airport are the North Airport Industrial Park. Again, most of you have been able to go ahead and take a ride up 18th Street and pull through there, take a look at what we have in the area. We have Stabicraft is there. We have Bar Hops there. Murray's Recycling is there. Right next door, we have a composite manufacturing campus where, we have ACTI, big fabricator and provider of goods and components to the aviation industries in the industrial park, in the composite campus. And we also have CRTC right next door that's doing advanced composite cross-laminated timber product and development, along with pickleball nets. So for all of you that are pickleball fans and you have a brand new net at the YMCA, it probably came as a direct result of the efforts at CRTC. So looking forward, I think the big question is, we're making good progress. We have a lot of successful businesses here. We have a legacy industry that we're continuing to serve. We have a marine terminal and a port that we want to make sure that we continue to support. We have a brand new airport that we need to utilize. So the questions are, what are we doing with all of this? One of the things that Caleb McMahon and his team came up with was to create a foreign trade zone. As a port of entry into the United States, we're entitled to have a foreign trade zone. One was never established here. So we're in the process of doing that right now with help from our congressional delegation and the folks over at U.S. Department of Commerce. What that will enable us to do is to go ahead and make sure that we treat commodities coming in from for import-export, and make sure that we have a different way of treating the materials that are coming in or leaving, and how the duties are being applied to those materials. So give you an example. If we're bringing something in for export and it lands here, or it gets transferred from the port of Tacoma or one of the other ports within the state, it allows us to go ahead and treat that as it's never been imported, because it sits in a foreign trade zone. Once it exits that foreign trade zone, you pay the duties on the equipment as it comes out, and only in the volumes that it comes out. And it also lets you treat those things that you're going to be exporting differently, rather than each component piece. Let's say we're importing all of the electronics and components that are being put on the interior of a brand new boat at Stabicraft, for example. Instead of paying export duties on the components that were imported, since they've been put together into a boat, and that boat is now as a complete unit, and they're exporting it back, let's say, to Canada, it lets them go ahead and treat the export differently than the import. They now export it as a completed product, and the vessel leaves as a completed product, and the duty is paid for as a completed product, rather than it's each individual component.
So Paul, how much of a savings is that for Stabicraft per vessel?
So just on a per vessel look right now, they estimated that on the 9.8% savings.
Wow. So 10 years ago or so, we, the port staff, interviewed, surveyed customers, and there wasn't enough interest / demand based on the costs associated with the foreign trade zone. Can you share how that's changed and who the entities are that are interested? And then also, what is the associated cost for the port for a foreign trade zone?
So there's two different components to how you can establish a foreign trade zone. There's this traditional methodology, which you have just a area that is designated as a foreign trade zone, or you can do a application that allows you to go ahead and designate different zones throughout a district as opportunity zones for a foreign trade zone. And that's the methodology that we've actually used. So the application process, as we said, to establish it, we're in the process of doing that right now. The fees that are associated with that are actually, if you take a look at the build out of if Stabicraft is doing 50 vessels this year, and you can save 9.8% on the export of those vessels, or a portion of those vessels going to Canada, more than pays for itself. trying to remember what the exact cost of it was, but let's just say that's probably sub $20,000 for us to establish it. And then each company that would be participating in that would be paying an annual enrollment fee to go ahead and take advantage of that. That's generally set by the port. Once we have a firm idea of what the total cost and impacts will be, we'll be able to go ahead and give a better idea what those will be. Seattle, for instance, for a small company with a modest amount of import-export business, that's about $6,500 a year. And then there's a transactionary fee for the duties that you're importing, exporting as needed. So with that being said, if you're able to go ahead and save monies on the duties that you're paying for your import and export, and it results, let's say, even on a modest 5% savings on an annual basis, let's just say your revenue per year on your export is 500,000, and you save 5% on that. That's a pretty good savings, and it's well worth enrolling for it. And as your business expands, it also allows you to build on that.
So Rick has asked, where do the savings come from?
The savings come from the amount of duties that you're paying for your importation or your exportation.
I guess my question is, why is it going to be less? Is it because it's local, or we're going to have lower prices, or how is that going to come about?
Because of the way the material is treated. So if you're paying, you can actually store imports in your foreign trade zone and keep that inventory out of your import side of your business, meaning you can keep it in that foreign trade zone indefinitely, and then only import it as you need it, Rick. And then you're able to control that cost, and you're able to go ahead and also treat it, let's say, in this case, if you were importing aluminum and you were constructing something from that aluminum, you're not only able to go ahead and use the finished product as what you're paying your duty on, so you've transformed it. You're not paying export on the sheet aluminum, and you're also not paying any duty on the aluminum that was wasted off as excess and then scrapped. You're also not paying on that. So you have a savings because now you're exporting it as a finished product, and you're also not getting charged for the waste.
Okay, how would, say, the craft be doing currently?
So there's two different ways that they're doing it. I can't get into their specifics of their business, but I'll give you an example. If they're importing, as they were starting their business, they were importing entire vessels and then assembling them here. They're now going from that to buying the raw material here, only importing the components that they need to import, being seats, electronics, etc. Assembling that as a finished product and then exporting it. So that gives you an example of that they're actually only importing the things that they need to import, and then only paying it as a complete unit rather than the individual components. Does that help? And
Yeah, thank you. That helps me kind of understand the benefits for our local businesses.
Absolutely. And what I would say, Rick, is I know Caleb can drill down into this much deeper, and I'm going to ask him to go ahead and give you a shout offline and just walk you through the entire process. I think it'd be absolutely important for you to be able to map that out for your clients.
Thanks much. I appreciate it.
Sure. Any FTZ questions before we move on to the next?
No.
Nope. So one of the other things that we're working on going forward is we're looking at the boat haven and how to improve that as a community space. So as some of you have probably been over to the harbor master's office or been in the area of the boat haven recently, you've probably noticed that the jetty has been cleaned off. We've put some parking bolsters up along the area, and we've opened that up for the community to come and use to park, have lunch, sit out, have a cup of coffee. as time goes on, we'll continue to do more of that. And then try to improve some of the spaces in the boat haven on the west side and the east side to provide better amenities to the community. As you know, most of you are aware, we had the fire over on the west side that took our restaurant out from over on that side of the marina. And again, we're open for ideas. What do we put back in that space? The community input's going to be really important for us to understand what you want there. So we welcome any input that you have on that. The next project that we're working on is we're putting in some new industrial warehouses are being projected to be poured into the North Industrial Park. We have quite a bit of inquiry coming in as far as warehousing, transport docks, cross docks for trucking, etc. And we'll be taking a look at how we integrate that into the industrial park without making a huge impact to the community. That may mean that we may take a look at how we need to expand the service road going around the airport. Another project that we're working on over on the south side of the airport is new general aviation hangars. Chris Hartman and his team right now are working with our contractor to go ahead and put a project plan together, get the engineering out of the way, and do the preliminary steps for going ahead and getting those hangars constructed. We have an entire master plan of hangars that we want to put in. Most of our hangars at the airport right now are, you know, they're getting older, but we're also at 100% occupancy for the enclosed hangars. The open T hangars we have some vacancy for, but most investment into aircraft today is in the millions of dollars. If you're flying something back and forth on a regular basis, or you just want to take care of your project aircraft or the aircraft that you have and you want an enclosed hangar, we need to provide more of those. So that's probably for the airport, the two big things that we'll be doing up there in the near future. And then another project that we're working on is the intermodal handling and transfer facility. This is the facility that we're operating right now to transport timber by barge back and forth across the Salish. And there's a pent-up demand where we're not able to meet all of that. So to expand that, we're also taking a look at how to improve the throughput there. We have a Maritime Administration Port Infrastructure Development Program grant that we have received, and we'll be using that in the coming 2 years to go ahead and improve the facility at the transfer facility, while also improving the stormwater quality at our facility. That also coupled with a portable port project that we're working on. Internally, we refer to it as Spud Barging, which means that we can actually take a barge with a bridge on it and two spud poles and move it around not only throughout the port to facilitate transfer of goods, but we can also move it up and down the peninsula and throughout the region to go ahead and enhance the waterborne transport of goods, whether it's timber, whether it's finished product of some kind that needs to be moved either here in the area within the strait or the Salish Sea area, or even down into the Sound, or whether it means that it has to go up and down the coast. There's a lot of underused facilities throughout the North Olympic Peninsula that we could utilize to help move that those goods and those cargoes along the coastline, rather than just trucking it or trying to figure out how to get it here in economic fashion. So working together with a lot of the industry in the trucking and the transportation and the logging industry, trying to figure out how do we go ahead and improve that. And this is one step that we'll be using to go ahead and make sure that that happens. So any questions before I move on? So strong leadership. I think, you know, you have three very strong commissioners that sit on the port I collaborate with on a regular basis, and I can't say enough about all of them. One of
You
them,
get a really great commission.
absolutely. Yeah, they're wonderful. And I truly appreciate every interaction that I have with all of them, and I think they serve you, the constituency, well. And I appreciate the efforts and the support that they give me on a daily basis.
Well,
So
I
with that-
think an
Oh,
important point about our commission, I've served with a lot of different people on commissions, is that we truly understand, all three of us, one, like the level of engagement and what the role is of commissioners. And I think sometimes, you know, people don't understand that. And frankly, I didn't understand it in my first couple years. And I think I made some waves that weren't necessarily in my lane, but it just makes for a much more functional organization when you get a really good executive director, you let them lead and you give them just the strategic guidance and set policies and the budget and not get into operations. But if you don't have that, then the executive director's spending a huge amount of their time trying to deal with issues that, you know, should be in his own purview.
No, and while I really appreciate that, I also think that, you know, now sitting in this role, I can tell you that I appreciate the challenges and the questions that all of you bring to the table, because that actually bringing those questions from the constituents that you serve in each one of your districts and bringing them to the table and making sure that we have transparency and make sure that we have a good approach to how we're conducting business, I think is imperative, and I appreciate all of that you bring to the table. So thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
So what can I answer as far as the port is concerned? I know, you know, we have a very, very diverse portfolio of things that we do for the community. And I'd love to have you ask me any questions that you'd like to table.
So Sharon Ann
put
has some
forward.
good questions.
Let me see if I can.
All my questions are good.
Yeah, go ahead, Sharon Ann.
So when your Marine Center is fully operational, so what anticipated revenue do you have?
So anticipated revenue, I think that's a very good question. From our point of view, it's basically going to be land lease. So the Marine Trade Center, we're not anticipating to go ahead and make any more investments in the infrastructure, and the land lease portion of it will be coming back to the port. The thing that will actually be the key driver for the community and for the industry here within the Northwest is going to be the services that Platypus and Westport are going to be bringing to the table, along with anybody else that occupies the trade center. I can tell you that an example that I can give you is the amount of service that Platypus is right now putting through for our government agencies, meaning the service that they're providing for the Navy, for the Coast Guard, for NOAA. It's pretty impressive. I mean, it's right now, I would say, one of the key providers for small craft in the Northwest. Again, private industry, I'm not sure that I should be talking about any of their revenue streams, but I think that you, Rick, Colleen, all pretty much understand dealing with them on a daily basis, what that brings to the community. So that's the portion that we can't measure. Is that did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
One of them.
Yeah. And so I would love to hear if Rebecca is listening right now. You know, she tracks the federal contracts, and Platypus
Of course I'm listening.
And Platypus gets a huge number of contracts with the Navy, Coast Guard, etc. And so anyway, they are one of her clients. Go ahead, Rebecca, and kind of share the importance of platypus to our local economy.
If you give me a second, I could actually, well, Paul mentioned
I-
Navy. I can pull up I sent it to you too, I think, Paul,
Well,
but then I got an
I have
update.
it.
It was about
I can
8.5
share
million.
it.
Yeah, but that's
can-
just for, in the last year, $8.5 million worth of contracts, I think.
I-
Actually, I think that was everybody's, not just theirs, but
I
it's
was gonna look at
substantial.
it.
Yeah, it's substantial.
Well, I have it in front of me right now. So I would imagine that here, I'll put it up on the screen so everybody can see.
But so expanding for them is so these were contracts that were awarded to them within the last 12 months.
Correct. And this is only as of the beginning of October. So we have still an entire quarter to go through. But you can see the impact as you're looking at this Excel spreadsheet, you can see the impact that their enablement to provide these services to the government has brought to the community. This is just a portion of their business. And this is public record, so I don't think that we're violating any kind of confidentiality here. But
so it's interesting.
They're on track to provide, a low 8-digit figure of service to the government by the end of the year, and that's all ripple effect in the community. Sorry, Colleen.
So it's interesting that they had one contract in November of 2022, and then everything else has been in August, September, and October.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yay, Rebecca.
I can help more people get millions of dollars. Just come see me.
And I think that the Department of Defense and Homeland Security probably owes you a debt of gratitude for putting this connection together. I think that everybody that I've spoken to, this is really a key component for them to be able to service their craft here locally.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of smaller businesses that are in the maritime trades that are really looking to enter into the space, and there's set asides for hub zones. All of Clallam County is considered a hub zone. And Rebecca, what's the hub zone set aside? Is it 3%?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes. And
And
that's going
then-
to be, we're going to really press hard this next year. That's my goal, is to get any business through the hub zone process that wants to get through it to qualify for those set asides.
Mm-hmm. And there's set asides for service disabled, veteran owned businesses. We've got one of those that we're working with. It's woman owned, 8A, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot that can be done for our local businesses. And we just finished 1 year with Rebecca on board, and finally, for 40 years, we didn't have any PTAC services virtually. I mean, we were supposed to be supported from Kitsap County EDC, and they just were not helping our area. And I understand why, pretty far away and that kind of thing. But now we've got Rebecca, and soon she'll have a counselor working for her and an admin person. So we got funding for, 3 people instead of just 1 after year 1. So we're really going to expand these opportunities because there's just so much out there that's available for entrepreneurs in our county and Jefferson County. But that's another story. So let's keep on with Sharon's follow-up question. Go ahead, Sharon.
I was curious about what size of airplanes can land and take off from your new runway.
So 737-200 or smaller. Yep. That at the current configuration of the runway is probably as big as we can get. So C-130, anything that kind of resembles that same kind of pounds per square foot displacement onto the runway from their landing gear. Is capable of landing there, and then also the runway is 6,350 feet long by 150 feet wide, so it needs to fit within those parameters and be able to take off and land in those parameters.
Thanks.
Sure.
And Mike Flynn had a question. Mike?
How do you leverage
Yeah,
the
let me
depth
go
of the
ahead here.
harbor?
Let me go ahead and ask the question. I'm going to have to leave here in a minute, but the question is, how do you leverage the depth of the harbor?
So, Mike, I appreciate the question. I will answer it by, we don't leverage it enough. We are one of the few naturally deep water ports along the Olympic Peninsula, and not only that, in the Salish and Puget Sound area. Our federal anchorage, which we have 7 anchorages out here in the harbor that are maintained by vessel traffic. Each one of those anchorages is anywhere from 80 to 100 feet deep. So it gives you an idea of the depth that we can accommodate here in the harbor. And our 2 terminals, one we have a controlling depth at mean lower low water of 45 feet, and the other is 36 feet. So the size of vessel that we can accommodate is quite extensive. And we do try to leverage that as much as we can. We've been working hard to continue to do that. If you look out here occasionally at the terminal, you'll see a big blue tanker moored up at Terminal 1. That's Polar Tankers. Crowley's also coming in here with Alaskan Tanker Company. We're accommodating these tankers here for topside repair because of the water depth that we can accommodate alongside. And I think that's our greatest asset, is to continue to expand on that. Thanks for the
Yes.
question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And then James had a question. Oh, at some point we need to explain to the public how these entrepreneur opportunities work.
I
Well,
absolutely agree.
Yeah, so a lot of it is subcontracting with Platypus, say. You got to understand what their needs are, and they do a lot of vertical integration for their subs, their work. But oftentimes the primes need different type of support, and that's something that Rebecca helps research. And there's an event annually in March, I think it's held in Puyallup, called Northwest Alliance, where all the prime contractors that get government contracts from Kiewit that are doing the culvert removal and fish barrier removals, to the Navy, to, primes that are doing large government contract work, they have booths, and they're asking for businesses' capability statements. So before you go to that, you need to work with Rebecca on making sure your capability statement is concise, well written, very understandable. And so you're matching your apples with theirs, and you're describing it in the way government likes to hear it, so that they're not having to try to figure out what the heck you do. And so there's, again, that's really where the opportunities lie for entrepreneurs, is to get certified as a hub zone business, or if any of the other categories fit, do that. Have your businesses, all the cage code, the EIN, et cetera, all those completed, and your capability statement done. And then Rebecca has methods to show where where you can search for these opportunities. But a better approach is at the annual Northwest Alliance event, where all of these primes have their booths, and they're looking to meet people, and they're looking for these set aside qualified businesses, woman owned, 8A, hub zone, veteran owned, et cetera. And because they have a certain percentage of goals to meet to, as subcontractors across the board, the goal is 23% of the work should be given to small businesses. So, right away, they're trying to find small businesses to work with. Platypus, as an example, though, is a small business. So when they do the contract, they qualify to hit that small business, and they're a hub zone. So, but, locally, there are opportunities like that to pursue.
And I would say that anybody on the call that has a question, don't be shy of reaching out. I think that, some of the main economic drivers for the community are within a 1 block area of downtown here. So we have SBDC in the building. Sharon Ann is here at the Port building. EDC was here up until recently. They just occupied a very nice space that most of you have been at. They're within 1 block of us, and then we have CIE downstairs. But I would also say that we have Caleb McMahon sitting here with the Port Director of Economic Development. If there's any questions, point you in the right direction, whether it's training that you need and you need to speak with Susie Ames in Penn College, or whether it's getting information in how to get your business going, he can point you in the right direction as well. So never hesitate to come visit us at 338 West First Street, Port Angeles.
Yeah. So Rick, you wanted to introduce Micah and Michelle and say a little bit more about what CIE does?
No, that conversation was, sorry, that was supposed to be back to Lori about planning our November 8 presentation. So
oh, got it. Okay.
Juggling between, so apologies for that.
That's okay.
And Rick, we're overdue for a catch up as well. So let's do that.
Okay, sounds good. I'll hit you up.
It sounds good.
All right. So any more questions for Paul? So much of what, one thing that's really challenging is that, well, everybody's heard about how expensive construction prices are. But when a port builds something, we have to go through really immense processes that are set by the state. And so RFPs and, just very, very expensive engineering and design, much more so than a private business would do. They can just make decisions and go with it. And if they don't like the entity, they fire them and move over. That's not plausible with a government entity. And so the other thing is, because we have been wrapped into King, Jefferson, and Clallam counties all are in one, for the most part, one collective bargaining agreement area. It doesn't include Kitsap County, which is really interesting. It jumps over Kitsap. And so our prevailing wage rates are the same as King County's. And so the people that we hire to do the work is very, very expensive, plus the transportation costs. So we're getting the businesses that are hired to do the work as the prime contractors, in most cases, are from King County. So the cost for mobilization, the cost to bring these people from King County are very high, and it just makes our projects usually 2.5, 3 times more expensive than if a private entity did it, which is just heart-wrenching to me, and I'm sure everybody else. But then we are expected to lease it at our local lease rates, competing with the prices of people that don't have to pay these extreme overhead costs. And not just overhead, but just the whole cost of doing the project. So it makes it almost impossible for us to compete. Go ahead, Paul.
No, I was going to say it's definitely not comparing apples with apples, but it's also an opportunity, I think, for the community that if you are a small business and you're a disadvantaged business of any kind, please come to us and sit down and let us develop you as a vendor contractor for the port and the community. I think that's an
Yeah.
opportunity that we can develop and take
Yeah.
advantage of. Yeah. James has got a
James
question,
had
but
his hand up.
Yep.
And then Patricia.
Okay. So I've heard this comment that we're stuck in King County cost of projects. What are we doing with our state legislatures to get us out of that predicament?
great question.
So I've been working on this issue for 5, 6, 7 years. And I first just asked for, and we wrote working with Representative Chapman, we wrote a bill just saying that the collective bargaining agreements that set prevailing wage rates should be public information. And Department of L&I that sets the prevailing wage rates should post those on their website. And that bill couldn't even get a hearing. The committee chair is very aligned with the unions, and she would not allow it to even have a hearing. So, the unions really are very engaged, involved with the legislature, and they are driving this process. And I've been told you will not be able to win this. Washington Public Ports authorities have been complaining about this for over a decade, and it's not gotten any better.
No, but I also think that in the recent discussions that I had with the legislators is that they need to hear from the business community and the public that this is something that needs to be addressed. They're not hearing enough of that to make sure that it's actually getting attention on the floor when it's being brought up for discussion.
Mhm.
But I think it's important to make sure that all of you stay engaged in that as well.
And I'll just say one more point on that, is that we'd love to have union jobs here, good paying jobs. We'd love that.
Sure.
We'd love to be able to hire people locally and have those funds stay local. But in order to create a union business, you need to have union journeymen. In order to have union journeymen, you need to have union apprentices. In order to have union apprentices, you need to have apprenticeships here. We don't have apprenticeships here. So we can't start to build the union system locally. And if you don't have a critical mass of demand in a location, then it doesn't make sense to spend the money on an apprenticeship. So last is Patricia's question, and we've got a whole lot to share in this space around sustainability. Go ahead, Paul, or Patricia, go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, no, I'm just curious of what we're doing for sustainability, because it's such a huge issue right now. And you talked about building and new industry, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure you're trying to offset that somewhere. So I was just curious.
No, I think there's various things that are on the table right now, things that we're working with some of our clients on. And there's also things that the port's working on to go ahead and improve sustainability, whether it's a microgrid project that we're looking at for putting a small solar farm in up at the airport that would take care of the electrical needs of the airport, or whether it's port electrification to go ahead and make sure that we are able to hold iron ships as they come in for loading cargo or work. There's various things afoot to go ahead and make sure that we're addressing that. Port electrification, I'll talk about that real quick. Not only is it for cold ironing vessels, but it's also for taking some of the equipment that we're using in the terminal or in the log yard and looking at how we can electrify that. What can we replace it with? The current piece of equipment, what can we replace it with going into the future?
So if I may,
Yep,
Paul, cold ironing vessels means instead of the vessel using their diesel fuel when they're at port, plugging into electricity.
Correct. Yep. So it's basically they'll be hooked into the grid, and they'll be powering the ship off of the grid rather than running their diesel engines in port.
And we've already invested in that. We've already done that.
We have.
We were one of the first ports to do it in the state.
We were, and we're still now taking a look at one of the big disadvantages that we have coming back from our clients as to plugging in is the peak demand charges that are occurring for them plugging in. So it makes it uneconomical for them to go ahead and plug in if it's 4 days or less that they're at the terminal. So now we're looking at how do we go ahead and take and shave that peak demand down for them and allow them to plug in and bring those charges down for them to where it's more palatable. So now that's looking at storage on the terminal. It's also looking at what technology that we can bring to go ahead and help enable that further, and also what we can do to look at that in the future of growing that. The one thing that we have to be cognizant of, though, is with that demand and the electrical requirements, is how do we move that electricity? If we're generating it up at the airport because we have the space to do it, how can we move it down to the terminal and let others take advantage of that? That's one thing that we're working through. The other thing is if we grow a fleet of vehicles in the port, do we have enough capacity within the system to take advantage of that and use an electric vehicle? I'll give you an example. Is that Port of Tacoma was just going through an exercise of taking 200 trucks off the road and replacing them with electric vehicles for drayage, meaning what moves the containers and the chassis from one part of the port to the other. And they're looking at an average of about 200 vehicles. If you take that and say, I'm going to charge these on a quick charge, 200 kilowatt hours per vehicle times 200 vehicles, that's 40 megawatts of power. We have to be cognizant of not making sure we're overtaxing the grid further than what it's capable of delivering. So there has to be a multi-pronged approach to that, and there has to be more than one answer to it. So I hope that answers your question, Patricia.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. Lots going on at the port, and we're just really excited to have you at the helm. So keep up the great work, and we'll hopefully make a big impact over the next few years. I know we've got some exciting announcements coming up, hopefully, if all comes to fruition. And so everyone stay tuned. All right.
Well,
great. Thanks, everyone.
Really
have a great
appreciate
day.
the invitation. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thank you, Paul. Bye, guys.